Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the initiative Mission Mains 2022. And today, being Monday, we have taken up polity and governance. Now, these are the topics that we are going to take up. So, local self-government, role of individual MPs on a decline, role of parliamentary committees, reforms suggested by the ECI. So, part of electoral reforms actually, and the Uniform Civil Code. Now, with reference to the local self-government, now consider this as a single question. I am taking up two past year questions just to highlight why this topic is very, very important. So the local self-government system in India has not proved to be an effective instrument of governance. Critically examine the statement and give your views to improve the situation. So this is previous year, it is 150 words. And now it can also be asked in 250 because there are three parts to this question. Okay, let's analyze this question and then we'll move to the next question. Now you see the local self-government in India has not proved to be an effective instrument. We may agree or we may disagree, but either way, we have to mention points that it has been an effective instrument of governance, or it has not been able to be that effective instrument. Right. So this aspect has to come. This is what it means when it says critically examine. And if you look at the statements, the type of statement that has been used, naturally, it is like, what are the pros and cons of local self-government, something like that. So critically examine the statement and then give your views to improve the situation. Now, when you attempt such a question, naturally, you will tell what are the local self-government. You will talk about the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. You can refer to Article 40 of the Directive Principles of the State Policy, which talks about the state taking measures to organize village panchayats and endow them with such powers and authority so as to enable them to function as units of self-government. Right? You do this. Then you talk about either you can write it this way, you can give a heading this way, that the objectives of the local self-government or the purpose behind, right? So that is how you can give, and you can talk about the expectations associated with local self-government or the positives that have taken place because of the introduction of this 73rd and the 74th Amendment Act. Now, one thing I want to clarify before going ahead is that local self-government was not introduced via the 73rd and the 74th Amendment Act. It wasn't introduced. It was always there. It has only given constitutional status. It has been mentioned in the Constitution. And that means that the states, right, the states have to devolve powers to the local bodies. And it is mandatory to have the local bodies, be it at rural, be it at urban India. Okay, what were the expected benefits? Now, let me just draw a small diagram over here. Imagine this is people. This is the whole lot of people, and naturally people are at the lower level as compared to the government. So consider this. This is the union government, prime minister, etc. Then this is the state government, and then comes local bodies, which can be at rural as well as urban. So naturally, these are at the level that is closest to the people. And naturally the participation over here would be more. It allows for greater representation also. So that is the first point, representation and participative democracy. You look at the panchayati system, the Gram Sabha is basically having every single member residing in that village, in that gram, who is 18 years plus. So naturally, Gram Sabha kind of a legislature which is taking question, taking part in policy making, taking part in holding the government accountable, that they can directly ask questions to the Sarpanch. So representative as well as participative democracy. It is decentralizing democracy from the center to the lower levels. As I said, it allows for policy formulation. It allows for greater role of the people at the implementation level. It is reducing the distance from the government to the people. It is empowering vulnerable section via the means of reservation, which is only at the local levels. It's local level that there is 1/3 reservation for women. Otherwise, not at the state legislature, nor at the urban, nor at the union level, we have reservation for women. So representation of women at the local bodies is much better as compared to the state and the union level. And we also have reservation for SC, ST, OBC, right? So we also have reservations for that. Then it allows for transparency when people are involved, people are important stakeholders, transparency and accountability. And one important means of accountability is social audit. Social audit of what? Social audit of government schemes or implementation of whatever the executive is doing. And in this audit, naturally, they will look at how the scheme has impacted the people at the ground level. So naturally, if the government is trying to know how the scheme, whatever measure that the government has taken, executive has taken, has impacted the life of the people. So naturally, people have to be engaged, people have to be asked, right? So it goes that way. So social audit. Now, one more thing actually is coming to my mind right now. The social audit in itself is a very important theme from the mains perspective, especially the governance section. Okay, so this is there, and then decentralization of powers. Now coming to the shortcomings. Now, one more thing, when you are writing your answer, don't just write shortcomings. This is my slide, so I'm doing this. You have to write a complete statement. And the benefit is that you will be better able to connect with the question and also with the prior paragraph. Now we have it, limited decentralization has taken place. It's not as expected. The funding is very weak. Devolution of tax to the Panchayati Raj institutions is low. Then there is also inefficient collection of taxes. This issue was particularly taken up in the Economic Survey 2017. It talked about need to bring in fiscal federalism, need to bring in some provisions that the state devolve more powers to the local bodies to collect taxes so that it is more sustainable. At the present moment, it is only dependent on grants that are coming. It is not independent. It cannot raise just taxes and be financially viable. So that is not taking place. Okay. Then the issue of Sarpanch Pati, the reservation is there, but husband is playing a key role over there. Now, this notion has actually been challenged to be true. This notion is being challenged, and we see that a lot of women are actually participating. But yes, there is a problem also. Next is infrastructural challenges, lack of digitalization, Panchayat Ghars office, lack of convergence, various schemes, funds from MP lads, right? So there we find issues. Then irregular elections. Many states have had poor records of holding elections. Regular elections might take place, but that is not happening. Okay, now let's come back to the question. So these were the pointers over here. Then your views to improve the situation. So naturally, now we have to give certain pointers over here. Now, in this regard, first of all, we have to ensure that greater devolution takes place from the states to the local bodies. Right? That has to take place. We have to invest in the functionaries, the people who are operating. So them training, capacity building, that has to take place. Greater devolution of funds plus more powers to the local bodies, more powers to be devolved so that they have more sources of taxation, so that they become financially viable, sustainable. In fact, broadly, there are 4 Fs. In fact, a question was asked with reference to 3F. So there are 4 Fs. So first is framework, which is basically how much of what the Constitution has provided for via the 73rd and the 74th Amendment Act has been handed over to the local bodies by the state. So framework, the compulsory provisions. Then comes the voluntary provisions. That is, so we have framework, then we have functions, we have functionaries, right? So functions means like we have the 7 schedules. So 7 schedule, how much of the functions have been handed over to the local bodies. Then functionaries, the people who are executing the functions, and the funding. So these are the 4 things that have to be improved. So this is the broad, contours of reforming the local bodies. So this is also one way of doing it. Okay, now we're done with this. Now let's look at the second question. Second question is talking about the importance of panchayat system in India. Now look, previous question, we were talking about local self-government. Now this could be rural as well as urban, but this is only rural India. Now we can also make this assess the importance of urban local bodies or municipalities in India as part of local government. Right, so urban local bodies, what are the issues ailing the urban local bodies in India? So that could also be a theme. Okay. Apart from government grants, now next part of the question, apart from government grants, what sources the panchayats can look out for financing developmental projects? So this is asking us about funding. Now thing is, funding or financials, the thing about this question is that it is very categorical. What sources the panchayats can look out for? Right, so we have to be very specific while writing our answer. So let us see these provisions. So this was asked in 2018. Same line actually. So Article 243I of the Constitution envisages creation of State Finance Commission to ensure sharing of state finances and government grants to the PRIs. Clear? So that had to be done. The State Finance Commission would recommend to the state government as to how much money, how much tax they have received, and that be handed over to the local bodies. Now, besides this, I will share this link with you later. Besides this, we have certain other sources. So Article 243H. So everything coming from 243, it provides for the sources of taxation. So apart from grants, they can also tax. So we should know specifically which provision allows for. So this, if you are able to quote, that will be very, very good. It will be a great differentiator. So it is an important source of income for gram panchayats. And these are, right, so there'll be many more actually. Briefly, some of the things have been mentioned. Then 243H, state governments may devolve more powers of tax collection. So it provides for more powers. Okay. So this is basically this only. Next is money collected from gifts through government schemes such as MP lads. In fact, MP lads in itself can be a question. So we'll do it later. Okay. So it becomes a source of earning for the panchayats. What else have you heard about municipal bonds? So municipal bonds or any other bonds which the government, which the local bodies can issue, from where they can raise developmental funding. So this was about the local governments. Now moving on to the next topic. Individual parliamentarians' role as the national lawmaker is on a decline, which in turn has adversely impacted the quality of debates and their outcome. Now look closely. This is part of the theme effectiveness of the parliament, which I use it a lot actually. But within that, it is talking about the individual parliamentarian's role. So we have to be very particular when we are writing our answer that we are only talking about individual parliamentarians' role. So we have to look from this perspective. We just don't start writing our answer talking about all other electoral reforms. We have to be categorical about here. Next thing, naturally, when we're talking about this, we will talk about absenteeism. We will talk about political logjams, politicizing of things, something like that. So something that we generally see and something that we generally ascribe to the politicians. But see, we have to be a bit, avoid such things. We will write, it's not like we won't, but we have to write more intellect-oriented points, which reflects, more in intellect, more preparation has been done. So first, we have some of the concerns. So one is the political logjam and disruptions that take place. Besides this, we have the anti-defection law. And what was the issue with the anti-defection law? It sees the individual MPs and the MLAs as the party's representative. They have to go by the party's whip, party's direction. So the independence of these MPs and the MLAs to take an independent stance, even if it is critical of their parties, it is not allowed for. Even though it is if in best interest of the public, it is not allowed for. Then there is the parliamentary form of democracy plus anti-defection law. Now look at this. Right now we have the BJP party. So they have like about 2/3 of the seats in the Lok Sabha. So in a parliamentary form of democracy, the party that is in majority, they form the government. So in this case, it is the BJP, and they have the majority over here, brute majority. And obviously, some of their members have become the executive. Now, naturally, whatever schemes, whatever measures that the government takes, they will support it. They will support it. So 2/3 of the House will have to do that. So 2/3 of the individual MPs or the MPs over here, and even if they disagree, they will have to abide by the government. Publicly, they cannot say it. Otherwise, they will be under the threat of the defection law also. So this is one of the shortcomings of the parliamentary form of democracy over here. So again, the emphasis on the party system rather than party system, which is overlooking the aspect of individual MP being a representative of his or her constituency. Then there is lack of legislative research. There is lack of legislative research. The MP and the MLA, there are so many things that are to be done. MP and MLA are asking the government tough questions. They have to ask. They have to discuss and deliberate upon some social issues. But for that, it has to be based on some academic rigor. So the MP and the MLA should be assisted by a team of researchers, at least. So the parliament should also be assisted. The committee should be assisted. But obviously there is legislative research, but that is not to the effect if we compare it with US or any other developed country. So there is a lack of legislative research. And what about the first time MPs and the MLAs? So for them to gain that expertise, that competence, it is not there. So it is only for the person who's a veteran, who's been there for a very long time. Okay. Then declining roles of the committees. Now you may say that committees, when I say it, is obviously a group of people. But see, you have to bring about this aspect that committees allows for closed room discussions. Closed room discussions, and this aspect is becoming less. So we saw a number of bills being passed without going through the committee stage. They just come and they pass the next day. So committees allow for deliberation, discussions at a much smaller level. So that is not taking place. And with that effect, we can say that individual parliamentarians' role is coming down. And that is also reflected in the debates and the outcome. And quality of the bills also. So many bills have come and then they have been taken back. People were not satisfied with it. And these MPs and the MLAs are the representatives of the people. Yet public is not happy with the bills. Okay. Declining role of the committees, and then the increased use of the delegated legislation. It means the parliament has made a law. Has made a law. Then the executive is making those rules or filling up for the inadequacies of the law. So that freedom has been given to the executive. Now, what we are seeing is that the delegated legislation is increasing. And one reason could be that there has been limited debate and deliberations in the parliament itself. Parliament or at the committee level, that deliberations have been very, very less. Now, naturally, for the law to perform well, they have allowed for greater delegation to the executive. Now, in this case, so we're seeing that the executive is actually becoming the lawmaker. So this is not a healthy trend. And ideally, the delegated legislation must come back to the parliament and then be debated and deliberated again. Now, what are the way forward? So one is, naturally, we need to have a strict code of conduct, be it with reference to absenteeism, be it with reference to the political logjams, disruptions, them coming into the well. Status there. Then reform the anti-defection law should be reformed in lines with the Dinesh Goswami committee, right? And we all know what happened in that Dinesh Goswami committee. So it said that it should allow for dissent, it should allow that liberty, but the defection should be applicable to only those clauses which can provide for the fall of the government. For other purposes, it should not be there. Then allocation of extra time for private members bill. Private members bill are what are private members bill? The bill introduced by non-ministers in the House. So these are not being taken up at all, or they've been introduced, they have not been deliberated upon. So that is again an individual MP's role in that personal initiative of a person, not from the government. So that should be there. Then there should be a reference of legislations, bills to the committees. So this should be a norm and not an exception. So when the bills come, it should go to the respective committee, concerned committee. It should be deliberated over there, and then it should come to the floor of the House. So this should be a norm. It should be expected. It should not be demanded all the time and then being denied. And so it should not be an exception. Now I thought, why not cover the committees? And we have a previous year question also. Why do you think the committees are considered to be useful for parliamentary work? Discuss in this context the role of estimates committee. Now we have a question previously on the public accounts committee. In fact, I can very well cross this and write the Public Accounts Committee over here. Or it could be anything, department related standing committee, anything, it could be anything over here. Okay. Now, how do we start? You can start your answer by telling us that within the parliament, obviously there are houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. These houses have several committees. Wait, I'll show you the Wikipedia page and that will help in your elaboration. Yeah. So we have the committees broadly divided into two kinds, the standing committee and which are the permanent and the ad hoc committees. The standing committees are again of the financial department related standing committees and other standing committees. Right, you talk about this. So you talk about this and then you move on with why we need these committees. Right, what all do they do? So for first, the house cannot really be, first of all, look at the membership of the house. So for them to discuss, deliberate, it becomes difficult. Plus, it is publicly clear. There is camera, Lok Sabha TV, Rajya Sabha TV. So it's being recorded. It's on broadcasted. So house cannot do each and everything. So what it does, it assigns the particular subject or law or any policy that it has to discuss to the respective committee. So these committees are not, it's not broadcasted, it is in closed door situation, and they follow a consensus based approach. It's not like majority vote takes place in the committee, it is consensus based. That means the MPs of, let it be BJP, TMC, Indian National Congress, when they sit together, they come to a consensus. So different parties are taken on board over there. Their recommendations then go to the House. So you will find that most of the times the views of the committees are coming, anonymously the committee declares something. So in agreement, basically. So that is taking place. And the recommendations of the committee are widely accepted. It is accepted. Lot of legitimacy is there. Okay. So they are also referred to as miniature legislature. Right, so that is there. The tasks of the parliament are varied, complex, and voluminous. So this work has been delegated to the respective committees. Now you would see that the parliament functions in the respective sessions, so certain time of the year only, but the committees work behind the scenes and they continue to work. So the committees play a vital role not only in lawmaking but also in day-to-day business functions. And besides, they also play a role in studying the demands for grants made by various ministries, looking into the expenditure incurred by various departments, and investigate cases of corruption, etc. Public Accounts Committee, for instance. Okay. Now moving on to the Estimates Committee. I think you can just take a screenshot, right? You've given your you would be with this, so Estimates Committee over here. So discuss in this context the role of Estimates Committee and just close the answer. Next is to enhance the quality of democracy in India. The Election Commission of India has proposed electoral reforms in 2016. What are the suggested reforms and how far are they significant to make democracy successful? The thing is, before going with the question, I was looking at electoral reforms, previous year question. So this is reforms suggested in 2016. Now, the nature of reforms that have been suggested, it is primarily associated with reforming the Election Commission of India. And since the Election Commission of India is the watchdog, it manages the elections. So it is it's about strengthening the institution of Election Commission of India, and naturally that will be an electoral reform. So that is the theme of this. And it's very specific about the reforms that have been suggested in 2016. So it is about reforming the Election Commission of India. So it's about this institution over here. Besides this, there are other issues also, which are obviously not covered in this. This is, should we have the first past the post system or the proportional representation? Or should we have an hybrid model? The issue of criminalization of politics, right? So that also has to be looked into. So that is a separate thing. Then UPSC itself has asked questions on the EVMs, and it has asked us question on simultaneous elections. So that is already taken up. We can actually re-refer those points. So this one is specifically to the electoral reform suggested by this report 2016. So it is about reforming the Election Commission of India, right? So it is about this. So I want to be very clear on this. Okay. And besides, there are also issues of funding of political parties. Now, when I say funding of political parties, it also brings to light one more issue, the issue of electoral bonds. Okay. Yeah. So let's see the points which the Election Commission of India had recommended. So it's about strengthening of this institution. So first thing it says that the funding of this body, Election Commission of India, naturally everything is coming from the parliament. So here it says that it is at present a voted expenditure. That is, it is put into vote by the parliament. It says that this should be a non-votable expenditure, like for other constitutional bodies, right? So this has to be done. And we call, what do we call non-votable expenditure? Can somebody write in the comment section? Non-votable, other term for this. Second, it says that Election Commission of India should have an independent secretariat, like that for Supreme Court and High Court. So they should also have independent secretariat. Presently, it is dependent on the union. So it's dependent on the government, and obviously it brings sometimes, it's for administrative works and whatever, it is dependent on the government itself. But somewhere Election Commission of India is to keep the government in check. So this will be very, very important, and this would ensure that there is limited interference of the executive, especially when it comes to appointing of officials apart from election commissioners. So that will give it greater autonomy. Besides this, it also talks about changes in the, not really interested in this actually, preparation of electoral rules. So for this, the state laws should be changed. Besides, it provides provisions for overseas electors to be able to vote. Right? So we have NRIs, brothers, sisters in different countries, but since they are very far away, they cannot vote, they cannot come to the constituency, it's not feasible. So they also have a stake in the government of India. So for them, there should be provision of proxy voting or postal ballot voting. I remember, I'm from Chandigarh, so Punjab University. So there were Iranian students, so for them, election was conducted. So Iranian students, so they could vote in Iran, their home government. Something like that, or e-voting, something should be introduced. It recommended the EVM totalizer system. So from different constituencies, it aggregates the overall, not from our constituencies actually. In a constituency, there are different polling booths. So what the EVM totalizer would do is, it would give an aggregated vote share for the entire constituency. So it will not give a result poll by poll. So at present, it is taking this play, and sometimes the political leaders, if they remain in power, they are vindictive to the people who didn't vote for them. Then false statements or declaration before the commission, etc., should be considered as an electoral offense. Then it said that the persons charged with cognizable offenses should be debarred from contesting in elections should be debarred from contesting in elections. Right, so cognizable offense. So it's about decriminalization of the politics. Okay, so this is it. So it's very straightforward. What are the suggested reforms? So just state the reforms over here. Besides, to enhance the quality of democracy, so you can briefly mention about the need for electoral reforms overall, and then state the reforms that were suggested by the Election Commission of India. Coming to the last question, this is about discuss the possible factors that inhibit India from enacting for its citizens a uniform civil code as provided for in the TPSP, 150 words. Very, very important issue. It's there in your Lakshmikant also. Plus, these days, even the courts are getting a bit frustrated and the courts are pushing the government as to why are you not introducing the uniform civil code? So naturally, there is a big reason for this. So let us see. Now, first of all, start your answer by stating what is the Uniform Civil Code. You can also mention that it is the Uniform Civil Code has been stipulated in Article 44 of the Indian Constitution. Right, it is mentioned over here. And it envisages it envisages that there should be a common set of the personal laws that are there, which the people are being governed by. So there should be a common set of laws governing every citizen. Right, so you mentioned this. Then moving forward, the issues briefly. So one is, especially with the minority, there is a feeling that it is preaching into the issue of fundamental rights. More categorically speaking, it is about the freedom of religion. So this aspect is getting undermined over here. Then with having the country having more and more of diversity, right? So there are different groups like that. So each group has the concern that their personal laws which govern them will be undermined. So if they're governed by the common set of laws, so there is a resistance to that. And actually, this is a significant vote bank or vote share. People are not happy, so the politicians naturally they are into the power because they get the votes. So they also are skeptical about it. In fact, when we talk about the Uniform Civil Code, the makers of the Constitution wanted this to be a compulsory feature. But given those times, the vulnerable times, they felt that for the time being, let's not make it compulsory, Uniform Civil Code. So they added it into Article 44. So that in the later time, when the time is conducive, at that time, the Uniform Civil Code may be introduced. So they had left it to the future governments, and even now, these concerns are there. And broadly, these are the points actually. So what can be done? Naturally, for this, first of all, it has to be a consensus-based approach. So minorities, specifically minorities, have to be, or different diverse groups have to be taken on board. They have to be taken into confidence. That is one thing. And now, naturally, not everybody is going to agree to a full-fledged uniform civil code. So, but at least we can take up the low-hanging fruits. So those things on which the chances of disputes are less, so those can be taken up, and then we can take up a full-fledged uniform civil code. So we can try with a piecemeal approach with reference to the UCC, and later we can look to have a full scale uniform civil code. Right. So this concludes the session. So thank you for streaming in to our channel IS Primers with me, Shubhashish.